3 hours after my sister's wedding ceremony began, two black Navy vehicles stopped in front of my townhouse, not police cars, not taxis, not wedding shuttles. Official Navy security vehicles with government plates, tinted windows, and two uniformed officers stepping out like they had been sent for someone important. I was standing in my kitchen, still in the dark blue dress I had worn that morning to a memorial service, holding a mug of coffee I had forgotten to drink. The doorbell rang once, sharp controlled, the kind of sound that makes your spine straighten before your mind understands why. When I opened the door, the senior officer on my porch looked directly at me. "Commander Avery Lawson?" "Yes." He gave a small, respectful nod. "Admiral Whitcomb requests your presence immediately." For a second, I thought I had misheard him, because across town, at that very moment, my older sister was marrying Admiral Whitcomb's son in one of the most elegant Navy weddings Virginia had seen that year. And I had not been invited. According to my sister, I was too severe, too plain, too military, too likely to embarrass her in front of the kind of people she had spent her entire life trying to impress. So when Navy security showed up at my house saying the Admiral wanted me, I honestly thought there had been a mistake. There was no mistake. By sunset, I would be standing in the middle of that reception hall, in front of admirals, senators, officers, wealthy guests, and my entire family, while the man my sister had spent months trying to impress told everyone exactly who I was. And my sister would go pale because she knew what everyone else was about to learn. The embarrassing sister she had hidden from the wedding was the very reason the groom's father was still alive. My name is Avery Lawson. At the time, I was 35 years old, a commander in the United States Navy, stationed near Norfolk. Most people who knew me would not have called me glamorous, dependable, maybe kikit, disciplined. The kind of woman people called when things were falling apart because they trusted I would not fall apart with them. I had spent 17 years in uniform. I had missed birthdays, funerals, holidays, family dinners, and more ordinary Sunday mornings than I could count. I had slept on ships, in temporary barracks, on airport floors, and once in a chair outside an emergency operations center because the situation report was changing every 20 minutes and nobody wanted to leave. My life had never been soft, but it had been meaningful. My sister, Celia, lived differently. Celia was 3 years older than me and had always been the beautiful one. That is not bitterness. That is fact. She had the kind of face people remembered after meeting her once. Bright eyes, perfect smile. A natural ability to turn any room toward her without seeming to try. As a child, she learned early that charm could open doors. I learned early that responsibility could keep doors from slamming shut. We grew up in a modest house outside Dayton, Ohio. Our father taught high school history. Our mother worked at a medical billing office. There was love in our home, but not much extra money. Celia wanted extra attention, extra beauty, extra chance, extra proof that she belonged somewhere larger than the street where we learned to ride bikes. I wanted order, purpose, a way to be useful. When we were little, those differences did not divide us. They balanced us. Celia would talk her way into adventures. I would figure out how to get us home safely afterward. When neighborhood girls mocked her thrift store dress, I stood beside her until they stopped. When I froze during a school speech in 6th grade, Celia started clapping from the back of the classroom until everyone else joined in. We were sisters then, real sisters. The kind who shared secrets under blankets during thunderstorms. The kind who made promises they were too young to understand. She used to tell me, "When I get rich, I'm taking you with me." I used to believe her. Life has a way of revealing which childhood promises were love and which were just mood. After high school, Celia went east. New York first, then Washington. Then private event planning for wealthy clients who used words like legacy and access without irony. She had talent. I will never deny that. She knew how to make powerful people feel seen. She knew how to arrange flowers, lighting, music, seating charts, and conversation so every person left believing the evening had somehow favored them personally. Her career grew, slowly at first, then quickly. She worked embassy receptions, donor galas, charity auctions, military balls. That was how she met Thomas Whitcomb. Thomas was polished, kind, and from a world Celia had spent years studying like a foreign language. His father, Admiral James Whitcomb, was not simply retired Navy royalty. He was active, respected, decorated, and still influential enough that men lowered their voices when his name entered a conversations. 4 stars, combat commands, humanitarian operations, congressional testimony. A career built from discipline, courage, and a very public sense of duty. When Celia called to tell me she was dating his son, I laughed because I thought she was exaggerating. She was not. "I think this could be it," she said. I remember smiling into the phone. "Then I'm happy for you." And I was truly, at first. For the first year, Celia spoke about Thomas. It's like he had stepped out of the future she always believed she deserved. He was thoughtful. He loved history. He respected her ambition. He proposed near the Chesapeake Bay with both families present, though I could not attend because I was overseas. She sent me photographs. The ring was enormous. Her smile was real. I stared at the picture in my small quarters on base and felt proud in a way I did not know how to explain. My sister had chased a dream. She had caught it. That should have been the whole story. It was not. The change began quietly. Celia started editing herself. Then she started editing everyone else. She corrected my mother's clothes before engagement photos. She told our father not to bring up politics. She suggested I avoid heavy military talk when meeting Thomas's family. At first, I thought she was nervous. A woman marrying into a famous Navy family might understandably want everything to go well. But nervousness has humility in it. What Celia had was control. 6 months before the wedding, I flew to Washington to help her with fittings. She had asked me to come, at least, that is what I thought. I arrived carrying a garment bag, a small overnight suitcase, and a stupid amount of hope that we might spend one weekend feeling like sisters again. The bridal salon looked like a museum where people were allowed to touch fabric. White walls, champagne women speaking softly as if louder voices might wrinkle silk. Celia stood on a platform in a gown that probably cost more than my first car. She looked stunning. I told her so. She smiled, but her eyes moved to my uniform hanging on the hook behind me. I had come straight from a formal ceremony. "You didn't wear that here, did you?" she asked. I blinked. "My uniform?" "Yes. I changed when I arrived." She exhaled like she had been spared something unpleasant. I felt the first small cut. "What's wrong with my uniform?" "Nothing," she said too quickly. "It's just not the vibe." "The vibe?" "Avery, don't start." I asked a question. She stepped down from the platform and lowered her voice. "Thomas's world is formal, but it is not harsh." I stared at her. Harsh. That was the word she chose for 17 years of service. I tried to keep my voice even. "It's dress uniform, Celia. It is literally formal." "You know what I mean. I don't think I do." She looked away. The seamstress pretended not to listen. Celia's face tightened. "I just need one part of my life to feel elegant." There it was. Not everything, not everyone. Me, I was the thing that made elegance difficult. I could have argued. I could have reminded her that Admiral Whitcomb himself had worn uniforms longer than I had been alive. I could have said that dignity was not the same thing as softness. Instead, I swallowed it. That had always been my role. Celia felt I absorbed. 2 months later, the wedding invitations went out. My parents received theirs. My aunt received hers. Cousins I had not seen in years received theirs. I received nothing. At first, I told myself it was an error. Mail gets lost. People make mistakes. Wedding planning is chaos. So I waited a week, then another. Finally, I called her. She answered breathless, distracted. "Avery, can this be quick? I'm in the middle of menu revisions." I didn't get my invitation. Silence. It lasted just long enough for my stomach to understand before my ears did. Then she said, "I know. 2 words. Small, flat, permanent. You know?" Her voice sharpened. "Please don't make me say this in a cruel way." "Then say it kindly." Another pause. "Avery, this wedding is complicated. I'm your sister. It's a high-profile event. I'm your sister. There are security protocols, seating limitations, press considerations. Celia." She stopped. I heard her breathing. Then she said, "You don't fit what this day needs to be." I stood in my kitchen, one hand on the counter, looking at a crack in the tile I had been meaning to fix for months. What does that mean? It means I need everything to feel effortless. And I make it difficult? You make it serious. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it was absurd. Avery, you walk into a room and people feel like they're being inspected. I walk into rooms the way the Navy trained me to walk into rooms. Exactly. The silence after that felt colder than anger. Then she said the sentence that ended something between us. "I cannot risk you embarrassing me in front of the Whitcombs." I did not speak immediately. Because when a stranger insults you, the words hit the surface. When a sister does it, they know where the old bruises are. I thought of the girl under the blanket during thunderstorms, the one who promised to take me with her. Then I said, "I hope the day is everything you wanted." My voice did not shake. I was proud of that later. She softened then. Too late. Avery, I ended the call. I did not cry that night. Not at first. I cleaned my kitchen, prepared my uniform for the next morning, answered 2 emails, packed lunch for work. Then, just before midnight, I sat on the floor beside my bed and let the grief arrive quietly. Family rejection rarely announces itself as tragedy. Sometimes it comes dressed as wedding logistics. The wedding took place 6 weeks later at a private waterfront club near Annapolis. The ceremony was timed for late afternoon. Military guests, civilian dignitaries, old Navy families, donors, politicians, photographers, everything Celia had wanted. That same morning, the Navy base hosted a memorial service for 3 sailors lost in a training accident. I attended in dress blues, not because I wanted to make a point, because they deserved attendance, because their families deserved faces in the crowd, because when someone is not invited where they hope to belong, they can still choose to show up where they are needed. The chapel was quiet, the kind of quiet that holds weight. A mother held a folded flag with both hands. A young wife stared straight ahead as if blinking might break her. An old chief beside me sang the hymn under his breath, off-key and unashamed. I stood through all of it, steady because that is what you do. Afterward, I remained outside near the memorial wall while people moved slowly toward the parking lot. Captain Reyes, my commanding officer, stopped beside me. "You all right, Commander?" "Yes, Mom." She gave me the look senior officers give when they know the answer is technically correct and emotionally useless. "Wedding today?" I should not have been surprised she knew. Bases run on schedules, rumors, and coffee. "Yes." "You weren't invited?" I did not answer. She nodded once. "I see." We stood in silence, then she said, "There are rooms that shrink when you are not in them, even if the people inside don't know it yet." I looked at her. She walked away before I could respond. That sentence stayed with me all afternoon. I went home after the memorial, changed into a simple navy dress, and tried to avoid the wedding coverage online. I failed. Celia's wedding was everywhere. Not national breaking news, but close enough in military and society circles. Photos appeared on social media, the venue, the flowers, the uniforms, the white chairs facing the water. The groom standing beneath an arch with his father beside him, Admiral Whitcomb in full dress uniform, medals bright against his chest. Celia looked beautiful, so beautiful it hurt. I sat on my couch with a cold cup of coffee and watched a short live stream from a local lifestyle outlet. There she was, my sister, smiling, elegant, effortless, everything she had wanted. I told myself that was enough. Then my phone buzzed, a text from my mother, "Wish you were here." I stared at it for a long time. Then another message came, "Your father keeps asking why your chair is missing." I closed my eyes. They had not known. Of course they had not known. Celia had told them something. Duty deployment, disgruntled conflict, Avery being Avery. Something believable enough to keep them from asking too hard before the day began. I typed back, "I love you both." "I'm okay." Then I turned the phone face down. Around 2 o'clock, I was in the backyard checking the tomato plants I had neglected during a long work week when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Something made me answer. "Commander Lawson?" "Yes." This is Lieutenant Park from Admiral Whitcomb's staff. Are you currently at your residence? My entire body went still. Yes, please remain there. Why? There was a pause. Admiral Whitcomb has requested that you be escorted to the wedding venue. I looked at the tomato plant in front of me as if it might translate. I'm sorry. What? Mom, security is en route. I actually laughed once. Not because I found it funny, because reality had briefly become ridiculous. I think there's been a misunderstanding. No, Commander. How did he even know where I live? Another pause. The kind that says someone knows more than they can say on the phone. Your service record is not difficult for the Admiral's office to locate. That was both reassuring and alarming. Is my sister okay? Yes. Is Thomas okay? Yes. Then why does Admiral Whitcomb want me there? Lieutenant Park's voice softened slightly. I believe he would prefer to explain that himself. The line ended. 20 minutes later, the vehicles arrived, and there I stood at my own door facing two Navy security officers, while neighbors peeked through curtains and Mrs. Bell from next door openly stepped onto her porch with a watering can and no plants. Commander Lawson, the senior officer said, "We're ready when you are. I need 5 minutes." Yes, Mom. Inside, I stood in front of my closet. For a moment, I considered staying in the dress. Then my eyes moved to the uniform hanging carefully in plastic from that morning's memorial service. The same kind of uniform Celia had once called harsh, the same life she had wanted hidden. If Admiral Whitcomb was summoning Commander Avery Lawson, then Commander Avery Lawson would arrive properly. I changed every button, every ribbon, every crease. I pinned my hair back with hands that were steadier than I felt. When I stepped outside again, the senior officer's posture changed almost imperceptibly. Respect recognizing its own language, he opened the vehicle door. As we pulled away, Mrs. Bell raised her watering can like a salute. Despite everything, I smiled. The drive to Annapolis felt longer than it was. The officers said very little. I asked if anyone was in danger. They said no. I asked if my sister knew I was coming. The senior officer glanced forward. I cannot confirm that, Mom. That was answer enough. As we approached the venue, the scale of the wedding became visible. Security checkpoints, valet lines, floral installations. Navy uniforms everywhere, men in dark suits with earpieces, women in gowns that looked like they belonged behind glass. The Chesapeake glittered beyond the lawn. My stomach tightened. I had walked into operational command centers during crises with less dread than I felt stepping out of that car, because in a command center, you know the mission. Here, I was the disruption. The officer opened my door. Conversations near the entrance stopped. Guests turned, first a few, then many. Whispers moved through the crowd. Uniform commander. Who is she? Why is security escorting her? I kept my face neutral. My mother saw me first. She was standing near a column, holding a champagne flute untouched in one hand. Her mouth opened. My father turned, followed her gaze, and froze. Avery, he said. I walked to them. My mother hugged me so suddenly I nearly lost my balance. We didn't know, she whispered. I figured. My father's eyes were wet. She told us you couldn't come. I know. Before he could respond, the crowd behind them shifted. A path opened without anyone being asked. Admiral James Whitcomb was walking toward me. In person, he looked exactly like men do when authority has become habit rather than performance. Tall, white-haired, controlled. His uniform immaculate, his expression unreadable. Beside him stood Thomas, the groom, looking confused, worried, and increasingly pale behind them. A few senior officers and family members followed, and there, near the reception doors, was Celia still in her wedding gown, still beautiful, but no longer effortless. Her face had gone white. The Admiral stopped in front of me. For one heartbeat, nobody moved, then he extended his hand. Commander Avery Lawson. I shook it. Admiral Whitcomb. His grip tightened slightly. I have wanted to meet you for 9 years. The air seemed to leave the lawn. Whispers stopped. My parents looked stunned. Thomas stared at me. Celia looked like she might collapse. I kept my voice even. Sir, I'm afraid I don't understand. The Admiral's eyes softened. No, he said quietly. I imagine you don't. He turned to Thomas. Did you know who she was? Thomas shook his head slowly. I knew Celia had a sister in the Navy. I didn't know he stopped because the Admiral was looking at Celia now, not angrily, worse. With disappointment so controlled, it felt heavier than anger. Your invitation was personally requested, he said to me. By me. I looked at my sister. She could not meet my eyes. The Admiral gestured toward the private hall. Commander, with your permission, there is something that needs to be corrected. I had no idea what he meant, but I nodded. We moved inside to a smaller room off the reception hall. My parents came with us. Thomas came. Celia came last, her wedding dress whispering against the floor like it wanted to leave without her. The door closed. The noise of the reception dulled. Admiral Whitcomb stood near the window for a moment, gathering himself. Then he turned. 9 years ago, he said, I was aboard the USS Harrington during a multinational relief operation after a typhoon in the Philippine Sea. The room changed around me, not physically. Mara does that. It pulls walls away and replaces them with rain, metal, alarms, salt water, and the smell of diesel. I knew the operation. Everyone in my command remembered that operation. 3 days of chaos, flooded ports, damaged ships. Civilians trapped on islands, supply runs in impossible weather. The USS Harrington had suffered a secondary emergency after a fuel line fire and power loss during evacuation coordination. I had been a lieutenant then, assigned to operations support, young enough to be underestimated, experienced enough not to care, the Admiral continued. During the crisis, command communications failed in 2 sectors. A fire spread faster than expected. Medical evacuation routes collapsed. I was injured during containment. He looked directly at me. You took operational control of the evacuation link from a damaged relay station. My mouth went dry. That night. I remembered that night. Not him, not exactly. There had been too many voices, too many call signs, too much static, a senior officer injured, a medical team trapped behind smoke, a young lieutenant refusing an unsafe extraction order because the route would have killed more people, me. I had refused it, then built another route out of incomplete information, 2 sailors' local knowledge, and a weather window that lasted 11 minutes. The Admiral's voice softened. You got 34 people out of a burning section and redirected medevac before the system collapsed entirely. I swallowed. It was a team effort. Sir, a faint smile touched his face. That is what the report says. It also says the team followed your plan. Thomas was staring at me now. His face had shifted from confusion to recognition. My father was one of the injured officers, he said quietly. I looked at him. He nodded. I was told someone on the operations side made the call that saved him. They never gave me the name. The Admiral looked toward Celia. I knew the name. Silence settled, the kind that does not rush. The Admiral reached into his jacket and removed a folded paper, an old copy, creased at the edges. I kept the after-action commendation recommendation, he said. It was denied public release because parts of the operation remained classified at the time. But I kept the summary. He unfolded it. Lieutenant Avery R. Lawson demonstrated exceptional judgment under catastrophic communication failure, preserving life through independent command decision-making under extreme pressure. My father covered his mouth. My mother began to cry. I stared at the floor because praise has always felt harder to stand in than criticism. The Admiral continued. For years, I hoped to thank you properly. You refused recognition through your command. That sounds like me, I said quietly. A small laugh moved through the room, but it died quickly. The Admiral turned to Celia. When Thomas told me he was marrying Celia Lawson, I asked whether she was related to Avery Lawson. She said yes. I asked that Commander Lawson be invited as an honored family guest. Celia's face crumpled. I panicked, she whispered. Nobody spoke. The Admiral's jaw tightened. You told us she was deployed. Celia nodded. You told Thomas she preferred not to attend formal events. She nodded again. You told your parents she had duty. My mother made a small sound. Celia pressed both hands to her face. I wanted one day, she said. Her voice broke. I wanted one day where I wasn't Avery's sister. The words struck the room strangely. Thomas looked at her as if he were seeing a second ceremony begin, one without flowers. I stared at Celia. For years, I had thought she looked down on me. Maybe she did. But now, beneath the polished cruelty, I saw something older and uglier. Not hatred. Fear, the kind of fear that grows in people who confuse admiration with love. Celia lowered her hands. When people found out Avery was in the Navy, they always wanted to talk about service, sacrifice, courage. They looked at her differently. Even when she wasn't there, her eyes moved to me at last. And I hated that. My father whispered, "Celia." She shook her head. "No, I did. I hated it. I worked for everything to look perfect. I spent years getting into rooms like this. And all she had to do was exist in uniform, and people respected her." I almost laughed from pain. All I had to do was exist. If only she knew how much existing in that uniform had cost. The Admiral spoke before I could. "Respect is not given because of fabric, Celia. It is earned by conduct." She flinched. Thomas looked sick. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. Celia turned to him. "Because I was afraid you'd admire her." The honesty landed harder than the lie. For a moment, no one knew what to do with it. Then Admiral Whitcomb folded the paper carefully. "The wedding will continue," he said, "but not with a lie standing uncorrected in the middle of it." Celia's head snapped up. "Admiral, please." He looked at her, not cruelly, but without retreat. "You excluded a woman I personally asked to honor. You lied to my son. You lied to your family. And you hid the officer whose decision gave me years of life I would not otherwise have had." His voice lowered. "That cannot remain private, simply because public truth is uncomfortable." I stepped forward. "Sir, I don't need anything public." He turned to me, and his expression changed, gentler. "I know you don't. That is part of the problem." The room fell silent again. Then Thomas spoke. "Dad is right." Celia looked at him. There were tears on her face now, real ones, no performance left. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Thomas's voice was quiet. "I believe you. But sorry does not erase what everyone outside still believes." He turned to me. "Avery, will you let him say what should have been said from the beginning?" I wanted to refuse. Every instinct in me wanted to step back, protect the room, protect my sister, protect my parents from more embarrassment, protect everyone except myself. That had always been my training before the Navy ever gave me orders. Absorb, minimize, move on. But I looked at my mother's wet face, my father's lowered head, my sister's shaking hands. And I realized something. Silence had protected the wrong people for too long. So I nodded. The reception hall had resumed its celebration when we returned. Music floated beneath the chandeliers. Guests talked over salad plates and champagne. The room was all white flowers, Navy uniforms, gold-trimmed glassware, and polished expectation. Then Admiral Whitcomb stepped onto the small platform near the head table. The music stopped. People turned. Thomas stood beside him. Celia sat rigid in her chair, staring at her hands. I remained near the edge of the room, hoping somehow the shadows might still accept me. They did not. The Admiral tapped the microphone once. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said. Every conversation died. "I ask for your attention for a moment before we continue." The room settled. Hundreds of faces turned toward him. Then slowly, toward me. I felt the weight of every gaze. Military attention is different from social attention. Military attention looks for readiness. Social attention looks for flaws. I stood straight anyway. The Admiral's voice carried without strain. "Today, we gather not only to witness a marriage, but to honor the families joining through it." Guests smiled. Some nodded. Celia's eyes closed. The Admiral continued. "Earlier today, I learned that a member of the bride's immediate family was absent from this celebration due to a misunderstanding that should never have occurred." A ripple moved through the room. My aunt looked toward my parents. My cousins whispered. The Admiral extended one hand toward me. "Commander Avery Lawson, would you join me?" Every cell in my body objected. I walked forward anyway. My footsteps sounded too loud. When I reached the platform, the Admiral did not ask me to speak, thank God. He simply turned back to the room. 9 years ago, during a humanitarian operation in the Pacific, I was injured during a shipboard emergency. Communications failed. Conditions deteriorated. Men and women were trapped in a section filling with smoke faster than rescue teams could safely reach them. The room became completely still. Even the servers stopped moving. The Admiral glanced at me. A young lieutenant refused a flawed extraction order. She built another plan under pressure, coordinated evacuation through a damaged relay, and saved more lives than she has ever allowed anyone to thank her for. I looked down. My throat tightened. The Admiral's voice softened. I was one of those lives. A collective sound moved through the room. Shock recognition, something like awe. Thomas stood beside his father, eyes shining. For years, the Admiral continued, I carried the name of that officer with gratitude. Lieutenant Avery Lawson. Today, Commander Avery Lawson. He paused. And today I learned that she was not present because she was told she did not belong. The silence turned sharp. Celia covered her mouth. My parents sat frozen. The Admiral's voice did not rise. It did not need to. Let me be clear. In my family, in my home, at any table where my name carries weight, Commander Lawson belongs. Something inside me cracked then, not loudly, not painfully. Like ice giving way to water, the Admiral turned to face me. Commander Lawson, on behalf of a grateful father, a grateful officer, and a grateful family, thank you. He saluted. A 4-star admiral saluted me at my sister's wedding reception. For one stunned second, nobody moved. Then every uniformed officer in the room stood. One by one, chairs slid back. Dress shoes struck polished floor. Veterans rose. Active duty officers rose. Older men with canes rose. Women in formal gowns stood beside them. Thomas stood. My father stood, crying openly now. Then the civilians rose too. The entire reception hall stood. Applause began as a few pairs of hands, then grew and grew until the room was filled with it. Not polite applause, not wedding applause, recognition, respect. The kind Celia had spent years trying to arrange, and I had spent years trying to avoid. I did not know where to look, so I looked at my sister. She was standing now too, slowly, tears streaming down her face, not angry, not humiliated in the way I had expected, broken open. That was worse and better. The applause lasted long enough that I forgot how to breathe normally. When it finally softened, the Admiral lowered his hand. I returned the salute. My fingers were steady. My heart was not. Thomas stepped forward then. He took the microphone. His voice shook slightly. I knew there was someone my father owed his life to. I did not know that person was becoming my family today. A few guests laughed softly through the emotion. He looked at Celia, then at me. I think the truth arrived late, but I am grateful it arrived before the day ended. That sentence said more than a speech. The reception continued after that, but nothing was the same. People approached me constantly. Officers, veterans, guests who wanted to shake my hand. Women who whispered that their daughters served. Men who told me where they had been stationed. A senator's wife who said, "Your sister is lucky to have you," with a tone that suggested she understood more than she said. I kept answering the same way. Thank you. It was a long time ago. But people were not really thanking me for one operation. They were responding to the reversal. The sister hidden at the edge of the story had become impossible to ignore. That kind of moment satisfies an audience. It unsettles a family. Near sunset, I stepped outside onto a stone terrace overlooking the water. I needed air. The reception noise faded behind glass doors. The Chesapeake moved quietly under a peach-colored sky. I rested both hands on the railing and finally let my shoulders drop. For a few minutes, I was alone. Then the door opened. I did not turn. I knew her footsteps. Celia stopped beside me. She had changed out of her veil. Her makeup was damaged beyond repair. For once, she did not seem to care. We stood in silence, the kind only siblings can create, filled with things nobody else has the map to understand. Finally, she said, "I am so ashamed." I looked at the water. "You should be." She nodded. No defense, no protest. That surprised me. "I thought you would say it was okay," she whispered. "It isn't, I know." Another silence, then she said, "I told myself you wouldn't even want to come." I laughed once. Softly, "That's not true." "No," she said, "it wasn't." She gripped the railing. "I told myself you'd be uncomfortable, that you hated events like this, that you judge everyone." I don't hate weddings. I know. I don't hate beautiful things. I know. I don't hate your life. Celia. That broke her. Her face crumpled. She covered it with both hands and cried like the girl I remembered from childhood, the one who used to crawl into my bed after nightmares and pretend she was checking on me. I hated yours, she said through tears. I turned toward her. She lowered her hands. I hated that yours meant something without needing applause. The honesty hurt, but cleanly, like antiseptic, she continued. When Thomas talked about service, I felt small. When Admiral Whitcomb mentioned wanting to meet you, I panicked. I thought if you came, everyone would compare us. I wasn't competing with you. I know that now. I was never competing with you. Her voice broke. That makes it worse. For a long moment, the only sound was water against stone. Then she said, "You helped me when I had nothing." I knew what she meant, New York. Her rent crisis. The time she called crying because she was about to lose the apartment she had lied to our parents about affording. I had wired her most of my reenlistment bonus. She never paid it back. I never asked. "You paid for the leadership camp when we were kids," she said. "I mowed lawns all summer. You never told Mom and Dad. You asked me not to." She looked at me then. "Why?" "Because you were embarrassed." Her mouth trembled. "And I repaid you by being embarrassed of you." There was no answer to that. Some truths do not need commentary. They need to stand there and be ugly for a while. Celia wiped her face. "I am sorry, Avery." I looked at her. Really looked. The wedding gown, the diamonds, the perfect hair coming loose, the terrified little girl inside the accomplished woman. "I believe you," I said. Hope flashed across her face. I raised a hand slightly. "But believing an apology is not the same as being healed by it." She nodded quickly. "I know. Do you too?" That was the first honest answer I trusted. Behind us, the terrace door opened again. Thomas stepped out but stopped when he saw us. Celia looked at him. He did not come closer. He simply said, "Take your time." Then he went back inside. That small act told me something good about him. He understood that not every wound needed an audience. Celia watched him leave. "I may have damaged my marriage on the first day," she whispered. "Maybe," I said. She looked startled by my bluntness. Then she laughed through tears. "I deserve that." "No," I said. "You deserve the truth. Those are different things." She stared at me for a long moment. "I don't know how to fix this." "Start by not trying to make it disappear." She nodded. "And with Mom and Dad, you'll need to tell them everything." "Not the elegant version," she winced, then nodded again. "And with you?" I looked back at the water. "With me, you start over slowly, if I let you." She absorbed that. No argument, no request. Just acceptance. That was new. A few minutes later, Admiral Whitcomb joined us on the terrace. He carried no authority with him this time. Only age, only weariness, only a father's concern. "May I interrupt?" he asked. Celia straightened. I almost did too. He noticed and smiled faintly. "At ease, Commander." That made me smile despite myself. He came to stand beside us. For a while, the three of us looked at the bay. Then he said, "Weddings reveal families, sometimes more than marriages do." Celia lowered her head. "I am sorry, Admiral. I know. I lied to you." "You did. I lied to Thomas." "Yes. I lied to everyone." He turned toward her. His voice was firm, but not cruel. "Then spend the beginning of your marriage becoming someone who tells the truth before comfort requires it." Celia nodded through fresh tears. The Admiral looked at me. "As for you, Commander, I owe you better thanks than a public ambush." "It wasn't an ambush, sir." His eyebrow lifted. "It was not exactly a scheduled commendation." I smiled. "No, sir." He reached into his jacket and removed a small case. "I had intended to give this privately if you had attended as planned." He opened it. Inside was a challenge coin, heavy dark blue enamel, the crest of his command on one side, on the other engraved words, "For courage without witness." My throat tightened. "Sir, I can't accept." "You can." I stopped. He placed it in my hand. "It is not an award. It is a thank you." The coin was warm from his pocket. For a moment I was back in that operations room 9 years earlier, headset pressed to one ear, smoke reports coming through broken channels, a decision forming faster than permission could arrive. I had not thought anyone remembered. It turns out people remember the moments you think were merely survived. "Thank you, sir," I said. The Admiral nodded. "No, thank you." Later that evening, the reception softened into something almost normal. The cake was cut. The first dance happened. Celia cried during the father-daughter dance, and this time nobody mistook the tears for performance. Thomas danced with his mother. Then, unexpectedly, he asked me for one dance. It was brief, polite. He smiled with genuine kindness. "I'm sorry," he said. "You didn't exclude me." "No, but I benefited from not asking enough questions." That answer made me respect him. "Marriage will give you plenty more chances to ask better ones," I said. He laughed. "I'll remember that." When the evening ended, I did not stay for the send-off. I slipped out before the sparklers, before the photographers, before anyone could turn my exit into another moment. My parents walked me to the car. My mother held my hand with both of hers. "I should have asked harder," she said. I squeezed her fingers. "You believed what you were told. A mother should still know when one daughter is missing from the table." That sentence stayed with me. My father hugged me longer than usual. "I am proud of you," he said. "I know." "No," he said, pulling back. "Not because of what the Admiral said. I was proud before that. I just didn't say it enough." I smiled. "Say it more now." He laughed, crying, "I can do that." The Navy security officer who had brought me there opened the vehicle door. As I stepped in, I looked back once. Through the venue windows, I could see Celia standing beside Thomas. She was not smiling for cameras. She was talking to him with both hands clasped in front of her, posture small, honest, afraid. Maybe that was where her marriage really began. Not under the flowers, not during the vows. Thereafter the lie broke. The weeks after the wedding were strange. Clips of Admiral Whitcomb's speech circulated online in military circles. Not viral in the way celebrity scandals go viral, but enough. People sent me messages, former shipmates, old commanding officers, sailors I had trained, a corpsman from the Harrington operation who wrote, "Mom, we knew you'd hate this attention, so naturally we all enjoyed it." That one made me laugh. Celia became the subject of quiet gossip too. She lost some clients, gained others who appreciated the honesty of her public apology. Because yes, she made one. 3 days after the wedding, she released a statement. Not polished by a publicist, at least not completely, she wrote that she had excluded her sister out of insecurity and pride. She wrote that service deserved honor, not concealment. She wrote that she had begun her marriage with a lesson in humility she would spend years trying to deserve. It was not perfect, but it was true enough to recognize. She called me before posting it, not to ask permission, to warn me that mattered. Trust doesn't rebuild in grand gestures. It rebuilds in small corrected habits. She stopped assuming silence meant consent. She stopped hiding things behind graceful language. She started telling the truth while it was still uncomfortable. At first, our phone calls were awkward, 10 minutes, then 20. Sometimes we talked about Thomas, sometimes about Mom and Dad, sometimes about nothing more important than whether her new kitchen had enough cabinet space. One night, months later, she called crying. I braced myself for crisis. "Instead," she said, "I saw a woman in uniform at the airport today and thought of you." I almost looked away because I felt ashamed. Then I went up and thanked her for serving. I smiled into the dark. "How did that go?" She looked uncomfortable. "That sounds right." Celia laughed. For the first time in years, the laugh sounded like hers. Not the social one, not the polished one. Hers the following spring. Admiral Whitcomb invited me to speak at a leadership luncheon for junior officers. I refused twice. He asked a third time. Admirals are patient when they want something. I finally agreed on the condition that the event not be about me. He said, "Naturally," then titled the session Courage Without Witness. I considered withdrawing. Captain Reyes told me to stop being difficult and go, so I went. I spoke for 17 minutes, not about heroism, about decision-making, about refusing unsafe orders respectfully, about learning the difference between humility and disappearing, about the danger of leaders who need applause before they do what is right. Afterward, a young ensign approached me. She said, "Mom, my family thinks my career makes me hard to love." I did not answer immediately. Some sentences deserve care. Then I said, "The right people will not require you to become smaller to be loved." Her eyes filled. Mine nearly did too. That was when I understood the larger gift of what had happened at the wedding. Not the applause, not the recognition, not even Celia's apology. The gift was language. I finally had words for something I had carried quietly for years. I had mistaken being low maintenance for being at peace. I had mistaken not needing attention for not deserving acknowledgement. I had mistaken strength for silence. Those are common mistakes, especially for women who become useful early. People praise your steadiness until they start using it as storage for everything they do not want to carry. Then one day you realize your calm has become their permission. I do not let that happen as easily anymore. Celia and I are not magically healed. That would be dishonest. Some days I still remember the phone call. "You don't fit what this day needs to be." Some sentences bruise longer than apologies last. But now there are new memories beside it. Celia visiting me on base and asking respectful questions. Celia sending flowers on the anniversary of the Harrington operation. Celia sitting beside me at our father's retirement dinner and introducing me to a guest by saying, "This is my sister, Commander Avery Lawson. She is the best person I know." I told her later that was too much. She said, "I'm making up for lost time." I said, "Don't perform admiration either." She nodded. "I'll learn the difference." And she is learning, so am I. A year after the wedding, Thomas and Celia hosted a small anniversary dinner, family only. No press, no donors, no polished seating chart designed like a military campaign, just a long table. Too much food, my parents, Thomas's parents, and me. Admiral Whitcomb arrived without uniform. It took me a second to recognize him in a sweater. He laughed when he noticed. "Disappointed, Commander?" "Only slightly, sir." During dinner, Celia raised a glass. My stomach tightened out of old habit. She noticed. Then she set the glass down instead. "I'm not making a speech," she said. Everyone laughed. She looked at me. "I just want to say I'm glad you're here." That was all. No performance, no grand confession. No attempt to turn growth into theater, just a sentence. I raised my glass. "Me too." And I meant it. Sometimes healing looks ordinary from the outside. That does not make it small. People often ask if the wedding felt like revenge. They want the satisfying answer. They want me to say yes. That seeing Celia exposed in front of everyone felt like justice. That watching a room stand for me after she tried to hide me felt delicious. I understand why people want that. For a moment, maybe it was satisfying. I am human. There was a part of me, wounded and tired, that felt the balance shift in thought, finally. But revenge is too simple a word for what happened. Revenge wants someone else diminished. That day, I did not become bigger because Celia became smaller. I became visible because truth entered the room. There is a difference. The Admiral did not humiliate her for sport. He corrected a lie. The standing ovation did not erase what she did. It revealed what she had tried to hide. And the conversation on the terrace mattered more than the applause ever could, because public justice may clear the air. But private honesty is what decides whether anything living can grow there again. If you are listening to this because someone in your family has called you too much, too serious, too plain, too intense, too difficult to fit inside the image they are trying to sell, I hope you hear me clearly. You were not created to decorate someone else's version of success. You do not become embarrassing because your life carries weight. You do not become less worthy because your strength makes insecure people uncomfortable. And you do not need a room full of admirals to prove you belong. That proof was already in you. But if the room ever does stand, let it. Do not shrink from recognition just because you survived without it. My sister married a Navy admiral's son. I was not invited. She thought hiding me would make her new life shine brighter. Instead, the admiral learned who I was. He sent security to my door. He brought me into the room she had tried to keep me out of, and in front of everyone, he said I belonged. But the real ending did not happen under chandeliers. It happened later, in quieter places, in difficult phone calls. in honest apologies, in boundaries held without apology, in learning that forgiveness is not pretending the wound never happened. It is deciding whether the future deserves a door. Celia and I are still walking through that door carefully. Some days it creaks, some days it opens wider. But now, when I visit her home, my uniform is not hidden in the car. My name is not left off the list. And my sister no longer introduces me as someone who could not make it. She introduces me as Avery, her sister, the one she is proud to have beside her. That is not a fairy tale. It is harder than that. It is family after truth, and sometimes that is the only kind worth keeping.